welcome back to Inverted Pursuits Laboratory, and we're back on Infinity. So, here she is. As you can tell, well, everything's dry in here now. On the back, everything's dry. I got it all off. You can see I've done a little bit of sanding where I've come in with some sandpaper just to take a look at it. There it is in the really rough state. There's just some globs that just need to be cleaned up with some sandpaper. And over here, you can see I've already been going at it. I've just been taking little pieces of sandpaper here. These are 120 grit. I've got also some 180 and 230 to use on this. But I've just been coming in here and sanding away at our fins. And I'll give you guys a little bit of video of that, but just like with the fin fillets when we were doing those, everything is just done ×3 when we're doing the outside sets here to sand everything down. And we want to make them as smooth as possible. They don't have to be perfectly smooth, but as smooth as we can get them because we want the paint job to look nice. Alright, so every so often you're just going to need a break from sanding, and so when you need a break from sanding on the rocket, a good thing to do in between those times is to get other parts of your rocket ready. The next thing we're going to actually take a look at are our motor retention, and now these are made out of the 2L brackets you have bought. Some of you may have chosen to buy a threaded motor retainer or of some sort or another. That's fine, that gets glued on in its own way. But the point of these is to retain the motor. So it's 2L brackets, and I've drawn a line from where I'm going to cut them, and it's a 1/4 inch up from the bottom surface. Alright, so here on the back end of your rocket is where the motor retention is all housed. You've got your screws in here on your T-nuts that you glued in previously, and these brackets you cut go on here and screw right on there. Now they'll end up going the side you cut here in, and they'll sit about at, I would guess, that angle by the time they're attached to the motor. It sticks out a little bit. But for our purposes, all we're doing right now is just attaching them to the rocket. Alright, so I've got a simple 1-to-1 pump of my resin and hardener in here that I'm mixing up. And we're going to go ahead and glue this mount on here. I haven't really quite figured out what side I want it to sit on. As you might be able to see on the fins here, I'm actually angling the fins off to one side a little bit. So the idea is that the camera line gets a shot past the fin, not straight at the fin. But I'm actually going to glue the mount on here straight up as to whatever it is with respect to the ground. Alright, so while everything over here is drying, which it's actually now dry, but if you're looking for something to do while it's drying, next thing you can do is move on to your nose cone. So the nose cone will have this bead down the edge that will have some flashing on it. Now the best way to take care of that is to take your X-Acto knife and gently skim it down the edge here to try and take off the excessively raised flashing from the mold. And this is just a leftover byproduct from the mold. And it won't get everything, but it'll at least get the large raised sections. And then you can take, this is some 220 sandpaper on here to the edges and start sanding them down smooth. And you'll actually want to do that down the entire length. But our whole point is to just try and smooth out this section here. And yeah, it's more sanding, and it's a nuisance and a pain in the butt. And it will scratch up your nose cone, but that's what you come back in with your finer sandpaper. That's not as fine as what I'm wanting. Where is my finer sandpaper bits? But you'll come in with finer sandpaper and clean it up and smooth it out until it's nice and smooth again. But you may have a slightly rough look to your nose cone. It won't be quite as polished as this. But the idea is to just take care of these seams. They're not the end of the world if you just don't feel like dealing with them. Some people really like to just get rid of that. As you can see how I've just gotten rid of the rough spots here, whereas the opposing side still has all this rough spot. And all I've got to do is just come in and Alright, so my nose cone is completely sanded down now. This is what it looks like, a little more white than it is black at this point. But it's the look I want. It's nice and smooth. It'll paint really well. I can hit it up with a little bit of filler primer first if I want to, and then sand it smooth again, and it'll get rid of any of those lines in there. But the next thing I'm wanting to look at is the fitment of my nose cone down here. And if you can see, my nose cone has quite a bit more wiggle than what I want it to have. So an easy way to fix that, other than buying a different nose cone, is to take some blue tape and wrapping it around the diameter. So I'm simply going to take a couple stripes of blue tape. This is 2-inch wide blue tape, so I can get between the two bands that exist. And this just allows me to wrap some basic tape around here. I pack it down and then test the fit. And that's pretty much what you want. Just a little bit of drag. A good way to test it, go ahead and aim you guys at me, is when you're setting your rocket on the ground and you pick it up, it should come out snugly. Often what you want to be able to do, usually you won't be able to in a rocket with a plastic nose cone, is you want to be able to pick your rocket up by the nose cone just a little bit. So the rocket should actually come up with the nose cone a smidge and then drop down. But this rocket's got some decent weight to it. There's a little more play than what I want, so I'm going to go ahead and toss a little more tape on there just to try and tighten it up a smidge more. That's way too tight, because now I can fully lift the rocket by it, so that's wrong. So there's just some little things you got to check with your nose cone to test the fit, and blue tape's an easy way to be able to quickly adjust the fit of your nose cone. It's still too tight. It's looser, but it's still too tight. So we're going to pull back to there. And let's see if I can get this right. Okay, so it wants to start to pick up with it. So if I angle the nose cone a little bit, I can pick it up at the moment. Whoop. Thankfully it is sturdy. But so it pulls out pretty snugly. You get a nice little when you pull it out. But there's your nose cone fitted. And at this point in time, your nose cone fits, everything is glued and mounted on. So your next step is to run and do paint. So, alright, we're on to painting. So I'm starting with my primer coat, and I always start with black primer. Gloss or matte, doesn't really matter. I just like all of my rockets to be a little darker, so I'm always starting with the dark primer. Painting, I feel like I should also mention that the only reason I am painting inside is because it is like 20-some degrees outside right now, and raining and snowing and terrible weather. So I set up a small paint booth here in my basement to contain the spray paint. There will be a little bit of overspray, but considering this is an unfinished basement, I'm not overly concerned about that. But let's keep going with the painting. Alright, so Infinity is now completely painted up. I put the logo on here. There will be a video specifically for how I did the stenciling of my Infinity logo on here. I've got my camera mount, which I'll show more about that at the launch site. But the entire rocket is assembled. The bottom's not painted. You can choose whether you want to paint the bottom or not. That's a personal choice. The nose cone fits in. I painted it just with a simple black coating. Didn't turn out quite as well as I would have liked, but the last big step before you guys are ready for launch is that your shot cord, I've had mine in the tube for a little while now, will need this knot. So you just overhand knot the shot cord. That wasn't enough. Okay, come on. Takes a little bit of work sometimes to find exactly how much you need in order to create the overhand knot, but just toss a little knot in there. It doesn't need to be very big. All you need to be able to do is find my other quick link. And the quick link just needs to be able to slide onto there. And now your quick link connects to your nose cone. Now this connection here in the nose cone is not the most sturdy. This thing breaks off a lot. So what's often a lot better is to go ahead and drill a hole either through this nub here or drill a hole into the base of the plastic, at which point using a quick connect's not the best way of doing this. At that point in time, I just go ahead and connect or tie the cord straight onto your nose cone. So, but thanks for watching, gang. I hope you enjoyed this. The next part of this series will come out at the launch pad as we're getting ready to launch, and I'll be flying Infinity at the Argonia launch in March 26th and 27th. It's also the same weekend as the Argonia Cup out in Argonia, Kansas. And that's with the KLOUDBUSTERS group. But if you guys want to watch Infinity launch, come out that weekend. There'll be a lot of rockets and a lot of awesome things going up, as that's the Argonia Cup competition weekend for collegiate teams. But come out, say hi, and hope you enjoy watching some rockets fly. Thanks for watching, gang.